You can still share now if you want lah. Okay, A very good evening to each and every one of you. Thank you for taking time on a Saturday to be with us. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Pamela Lim. And it's an amazing journey. When I first got to know this woman, for her to, we all know that prostitution is one of the earliest professions actually, and yet there's so much stigma attached to it. So when Pamela shared her story, it really moved me. And my hope is that it will do the same for you. Okay, so thank you, Pamela, for being with us tonight. Let me share.
Yeah, thank you, Junia, for inviting me.
Okay, Pamela is today a happy mother of 3 boys, and she's an entrepreneur. So she does doTERRA oils, and she's also an author of the book Love Heals. So Pamela, I just wanted to find out, what is your book about?
Okay, so Love Heals is actually a personal journey of the ups and downs, the challenges that I went through in my past. And well, I went through quite a challenging path for myself. And so therefore, I wrote my book to share with people, to let them know that no matter how tough or how challenging your life can be, there will always be a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Thank you. So what's your story about? What's the central theme of Love Heals?
So what happens was, I actually started off being a very young entrepreneur at the age of 25. And back then, being very new to business, being very new to entrepreneurship journey, I had friends whom, who were they were the ones that brought me into the business partnership together. And, when things didn't work out, they actually left the business and just left me to actually do whatever I could for the business. And back then, I met different people. They were so-called friends who were supposed to help me, but they actually got me into deeper depths and more shit that I went through. So at one point of my life, I was literally homeless, jobless, and penniless. My family back then didn't understand me. So my brother was very upset. I made some mistakes, and they were very upset. And he threw me out of the house. So there was a stage in my life when I was really feeling very down, very low, going through depression. It was really like losing everything, not having friends, not having family around me, and it was really a very, very sad period of my life. And at that point, I also went into depression. And that was, I guess, the turning point when I was at my lowest point in my life. Actually, I met my husband. He actually became the turning point for me.
So if we were to dwell a bit more, right? So when you said you were homeless, you were penniless and jobless, you chose to become a prostitute, or how did you end up in this profession?
So I think for me back then, I was in a very high survival mode. All I wanted to was just to survive. And to be honest, I didn't think about going into prostitution. So what was happening was, I was still looking for means and ways how I could, turn that situation around. So I think back then there was some, the internet back then was like, you can go to some rooms, and then you can go online and chat. So I was very desperate because a lot of my friends were already avoiding me, and I was in quite a bad shape back then. So I didn't know how to go about it. So I actually went online. I started looking for people to chat with, and to see whether if I could find any solutions for my problems. And I guess when I started chatting, there were a few guys that actually kind of suggested that, why don't you try that, to actually make some money for yourself to survive and to push on. So that was how I got that idea. And when you are pushed to the limit, when you don't really have a clue how to continue, like I didn't have a job, I didn't have money, I didn't have a home, I didn't know where else I could I could go to find a way out. So that was like the last resort that I ever that really came to me, that says, okay, if that's the resort that I actually have to do it just to survive, I actually did that. That was how I actually ended up in that route. Yeah.
I hear you, and what I want to say is, there's no, frankly, prostitution is the oldest profession in the world, and yet I think the difficulty about it is the stigma that's attached to it, the whole barrage of should and should not, So share a bit more, like when you entered this profession, right? What were some highs and some lows in that period for you? High and low points in your life?
Wow. I think I actually never knew what to expect when I actually entered that profession, to be honest. I think I met different groups of males. There were some males that really treated me as a human being. I mean, they were very nice to me. They were telling me, they says, okay, I don't know why you're doing it, but I know that you need money. And so they actually they respected me as a woman, and they knew that, I was just doing it because I needed the money. And that was when I felt like, okay, at least I was being respected, and I was treated as a human, you know. But on the flip side, I also met males who just treated me like shit, I would say. It's like I actually remembered an incident where one of the guys actually um he actually had sexual disease, and he we did it the first time round with protection, but he actually forced himself on me on the second time round, and I actually ended up with sexual disease. So, and
Sorry,
it
with
was
what?
like with the sexual disease, yeah, with the
Oh,
STD lah.
okay. Okay.
So it was very humiliating to me. It was like for me it was just like, to me it was a fair exchange where I give him what he wanted, and I got my money. But he actually went to the extreme route. He forced himself on me without any protection, and I actually uh, ended up having a sexual disease. And that was that was very devastating for me, because I was I was very emotionally very upset and very down, because this guy literally did not respect me, and just did what he wanted to do, out of his own whatever. I don't know what he was thinking about. And so I would say that it was really the two sides of it. I do meet good people, and I also meet people that are not so good in that sense. So that was a journey and experience that I went through. And it also took me quite some time before I actually learned how to trust a person again. Yeah.
And who was your, so I hear what you share, and I think it's not just an isolated experience. I think there are many women out there who sometimes, you know, you're married but you don't feel like having sex, and your husband just thinks that he has the right to just do whatever he wants, right? So I get what you're saying, and I don't think it's just isolated to in the prostitution, but you know, just men respecting women is a broad thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so you met your husband, right? And your knight in shining armor. And share more about that. How did you first meet him? You know, was he a
Uh,
client, or you know? Yeah.
okay. So I also met him online as a friend initially. So initially to me I thought like he was just going to be a client of mine. Yeah. So we met, and I think over time it was very strange because I just felt uh as in he gave me a kind of sense that someone that I could depend on, because back then I was already in depression. I kind of I was really in a very bad state in my life. My whole entire life was really crumbling down. Like, I had no career, I had no work, I had, my family relationships back then with my family were not very well as well. And when I met him and he found out that, I was in quite a bad shape. So he actually came, and he said, okay, if you need money to eat, he actually buys meals for me. And when I didn't have a place to stay, or when I had arguments with my family and I didn't feel like going back home, he will just say, okay, why don't I just check you into a hotel and you just stay there for a night, just to rest and recover.
That's so sweet.
And when he found out that, yeah, so when he found out that I had sexual diseases, when I was sick, he actually brought me to the clinic, and he said, you just go and he was actually working throughout then. So he would just put me in the clinic. He said, you just go there and have your checkup and everything. I will come back later to settle the bill for you. And then he will go back to his work, and then actually came back, and whatever he promised, he actually did come back, and he will settle the bill for me. He actually never let me, leave me in that ditch where I couldn't handle that situation. So it was because of him that gave me that warmth, that at least I didn't have to worry so much. If I didn't have money to eat, he will feed me. If I didn't have a roof to stay, he will at least give me a roof. At least I could still stay for one night. And we that was how we started off as a friendship, I guess. And over time, I just felt like I was very safe when I was with him. He was someone that I could have a shoulder to lean on. And it was a very different feeling, because I although I've been in a few relationships, right, but I never had that kind of feeling when I could have someone that I could just depend on, I could have a shoulder to lean on, and someone who could just kind of protect me from whatever that's happening around me. Yeah. So that was a very nice feeling. In fact, what happened was, when I met him, I was going through a lot of stress, and at one point I committed suicide. And
You
I
attempted to lah.
yeah, I did attempt suicide. And it was really when I was really at a very down period of my life. So I feel that I didn't know how he found me. So it was like I knew that, that at one point I was at East Coast Beach. I was just very near to East Coast Beach. And I just said, okay, I'm gonna end my life. And I just threw my bag on the beach, and I really literally walked into the water. And I was like telling myself, I just wanted to end everything because I was so sick and tired. And I didn't have anything that I could look forward to, like, something that could give me the hope to continue what I was doing. And at that point, I just walked. I just remember that I was just walking all the way to the water, and suddenly in the middle of the water, I just froze. I just couldn't move. And back then, we were not married then. My husband found me in that big East Coast beach. Somehow, he actually found where I was. And, because I just froze there, I heard them calling me, coming back, come back, come back. But I just couldn't. I just froze in the water for a very, very long time. And subsequently, of course, they actually had to call the police. And, the police came to actually get me out of the water. So it became a police case where I actually ended up in the police station because suicide is actually a crime, So, they had to kind of like just detain me overnight at the police station for just questioning. Yeah. And yeah, so that was how it was.
Wow. When you share about your husband, it just warms my heart, because to have someone see you at your lowest, at your worst, when you are in depression and nothing to give, and still be that knight in shining armor, still be that shoulder for you. I think it's wow. It's remarkable, that and that, like what you say, he actually found you.
Yeah.
And stopped you from taking your life, right? Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's something that is so miraculous, lah. So how I mean, he's your husband today. So what made you step out of this? It's an unusual relationship. So how did he propose eventually?
I think we, in that journey part, he saw me through going into the mental hospital. He saw me through going into suicides, and we were just together in a way, but yet it was kind of a relationship that we didn't announce to our family or our friends. So it was like, although he was like my hero, but we didn't really um feel like it was time for us to actually announce to even my family or my friends about our relationship. So what happened was, we had been together for maybe about 9 months or so, and suddenly I actually found out that I was pregnant. I was pregnant with his child. So in fact, I wasn't ready. In fact, I was not ready for the relationship because, I was still recovering from my depression, and I felt that I wasn't ready to actually have the child, to be honest. But my husband was the responsible person, and he said that, this is our child, and he wants to be responsible for it. And so he says, let's just get married lah. And he wants to take full responsibility for the baby, and he was willing to do that, right? So that was what happened, and it was like very ironic because initially we thought we didn't know how to break the news to the family, to the family or the friends. So we kind of, I actually approached two of my good friends back then, who actually knew about the relationship, the both of us. And I said, hey, can you help us to, just we are, going to register for our marriage, and we just want to, get someone to put the name to help us with it. So my two of my good friends actually agreed. And that was how we actually started out in the beginning, you know.
I got it.
Yeah,
So your
so
friends
yeah.
were your witness. It wasn't even your family members. It
Yeah, it
was your
was.
friends.
Yeah, but actually, what happened was 2 weeks before the whole entire wedding came, we decided that okay, I think it's time for us to break it up to the family. So we actually changed the witness to my dad and his brother. Yeah, so that was how it happened. Yeah.
And how did your family take to it? You know, were they excited for you? Because, yeah, were they excited for you? Because, you know, in conservative Asia,
Um.
we don't normally share our private life so openly, you know, so
Yeah. I think for my parents, my mom before I got married, right? So my mom kind of suspected that I was pregnant and I was having a relationship, but she didn't really she didn't expose me lah. I guess she was very nice to me, but when so when I finally told her, says okay, actually we are planning to get married, and she says okay, so 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 it was like finally, although my parents had seen my husband, he came to my house a few times before, but it was like we were like more of a friend kind. We didn't really in a relationship back then. Yeah. So they were, still were like they were still clueless, like as in, how what is the relationship between us? Because we just tell each as we are friends, but we didn't want to say that like we're dating or anything else, right? And because in that short span of time, we went through a lot together as well. Like I was going through depression, I was having suicide, and everything else. So it was really very tough for us to like just announce. So so it was really like the last minute that even my husband's family that we announced that says, oh, we are going for ROM and we're just gonna have, and we did a very simple ROM and a very simple dinner, just the close family members, and that was all we did. We didn't even have go through any very grand wedding ceremony, or we didn't even have wedding photos taken, or all these things. We just did a very very simple ROM, and it was just dinner for close family, and that was it. Yeah, and that was what we did for us. Yeah.
I think it's just so beautiful. I didn't know there was so much to your story, you know. I only knew the beginning, but I didn't even know you committed suicide or even your sexually transmitted diseases, or even that it was because you had a child that you all decided to get married, you know. And when you chose to write your book, Love Heals, in 2016, um, uh, like I'm sure you considered, because it's a very awkward situation where relative and friends will recognize you, correct? I mean, once you decide to come public about this. So how have you dealt with that? You know, has anyone recognized you so far? And you know, yeah, you or your husband or even your children.
Mm, I would say that okay. Generally, of course, when I decided to write this book, it was also um I got this prompting from God somehow, like this book is gonna um help or inspire people who actually are going through what I have gone through in my life. So I didn't really think so much of the so-called the publicity in that sense. I actually didn't I didn't dwell in it. Like I didn't think of so much of how would people react back then. But of course, when when my story was actually featured in the media, I experienced two sides of humanity. Like I would say, it's like one side there were people who knew what I went through and were genuinely, uh, were more supportive and loving towards my situation and what I went through. And on the other hand, on the flip side, I actually experiencing people backlashing on me, even, saying that, wow, how could you do such a thing? You are a beautiful woman, and how could you kind of share your stories and say all these things out in the public. So I think for me, my whole objective wasn't about being, getting fame or getting that publicity that I wanted right from the very beginning. It was more of just genuinely sharing a story, a genuine personal journey and a personal story that I actually went through in my life. To actually just to let people know that, yeah, I have gone through a lot of shit in my life. I've gone through a lot of challenges in my life, and but yet, along the way, I met good people, I met nice people, I met my husband, I met wonderful people who actually gave me a hand and helped me out of whatever I have gone through in my life. So that message was just to share about how no matter what situation or no matter what shit or whatever difficulty that you may be in your experience, in your life, in your journey, there will be somehow, there will be angels, there will be people, there will be kind souls be kind souls who actually uh who will on along your journey will extend a hand and say, can I help you? So that was my journey where I have gone through, and I also have literally strangers and people that I don't even know who actually has extended their hand and says, you seem to be in some kind of trouble, do you need any help? And that was just the message that I wanted to put across to tell people that.
I think what
Yeah.
you said is so powerful because there will always be people who will judge us, right? And there will always be people who will be kind, and instead of listening to the haters, to just receive help graciously.
Yes.
And I want to applaud you because it's definitely not for fame. I mean, it takes a lot of courage for someone like you to come out in the open about your low point in your life. And I'm sure it has and it will continue to inspire many people who go through challenges as well. So my question for you is, what is one advice you have for women, who are still in the profession or who intend to go into prostitution? Is there something that you want to, advise them?
um I would think that first, I mean, if they are thinking of going in, I would suggest them to really think carefully, what do they want to achieve, or what do they hope to achieve by going into the profession. If it's just purely for money, there are actually many ways of making money. You don't have to be selling yourself or selling your body in exchange for that. I guess in the traditional sense, a lot of people would think, okay, that is the easiest way lah. That's like easiest way to actually get money. The fastest and easiest way. But I guess having gone through my journey, I also realized that there are many ways that we can be able to earn money legally, you know, ethically. And for people who are already in in the scene, in the profession, I guess for them, they they could be either be in a no choice situation. It could be that they are forced to it, or they don't have a way out. That that is why they are inside, and they may not have any means and ways to get out of it. So if they could, have, I know that there are people who are in the support group that they do help women in this area, to help them to slowly transit out from where they used to be to come up to where they can still make a living with some skill sets, that they will be able to train them in skill sets or another way out where it may not be a choice that they choose to want to be in. There are many circumstances because I've been through that, and I know that we also go through a lot of emotions with all this with this profession itself. It's like I felt a lot of shame, I felt a lot of guilt, I felt a lot of different emotions going through back then when I was in it. So I can understand that, it may not be very easy for them to, to taking that first step out to a totally new life. But it's possible if they were if they are open enough and they want to take that courage, they can do so. I believe that everyone does have a choice in whatever decisions they make in their life.
So question for you, right? If you could go back to the first point where you chose to have your first client, let's say, we could travel back in time, would you make the same decision? Because your story has, unraveled such that you found a man who loved you, and your depression and your suicidal attempts and your prostitution story has actually a light, so there is good that came out of it. So would you still have chosen the same route?
Well, I wouldn't be very sure because, if I had to go through it all over again, I would probably, it really depends on the circumstances and the situation that I'm in. Because I think, we all make decisions at that point in our life, which we feel that was the best decision was that was there at that point in time. So for me, I guess I actually made that decision based on I didn't have another way out back then. And that was like the unexpected way lah. Like, it was like not something that people would go the normal route, but it was like when you are in a dead end and you say, okay, there's another way out. Just try it out, So I guess I wouldn't know whether I would go back again if I had another second chance, because I wouldn't know what the circumstances or what the situation would have been for me if it has a different circumstances where I had more choices or I had better choices for me. Probably I may not want to have gone through the same route that I have gone. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, because what I hear is, in life we have choices given our circumstances, and once we make them, we make the most of the best of it as we move along. Yeah. Okay, so one last question. You do have 3 kids, right? So do they know about this profession, or how do you intend to tell them about this if you haven't already?
Okay, so when I wrote my book, my 2 older boys were in primary school, so they are not matured at that point. Of course, my eldest boys, my two boys actually, especially my elder boy, I know that he actually took my book and he read some chapters of the book, especially those pertaining to his story lah. It's like, because I write about my boys, right? So like some of the chapters where he found interesting, he actually read it. Yeah, and I would say that maybe they may not be able to understand the profession or what I have gone through, and I felt that at this point it may not be so appropriate for me to even speak to them. So I would think what I would do is, when they are older, I would probably have a, like, sit down and have a more heart-to-heart talk with them to actually let them understand, because I think I don't want them to be judged as well. Like,
Yeah.
if they go out and, people do judge. And like, if people judge like your mom's past or whatever, it will also affect my kids. And I don't want that to happen to them. So I just want them to grow up happy, have their own life, and not to be, judged because I was what was my past that will actually, impact on them. So I guess it would be for me when they are slightly older, I would really have to explain to them and let them know what what was it that I went through back then. It was not that I wanted to do it, but in a situation where I didn't have a choice. And I am sure that they will be able to understand when they are much older, and I think that would be more appropriate for me. Yes.
I get it. So thank you so much, Pamela. And for those viewers of you out there, this is the story of a brave lady. And it reminds me, of this parable where, this lady, she was caught in adultery and the angry man dragged her out and wanted to stone her to death. There was a wise man though. And when they asked the wise man to be the judge, the wise man just looked at them and said, "Let he who has no sin cast the first stone." One by one, the accusers left, because really, before we judge someone else, let's look at the things that we have done in our lives that we are still hiding, instead of coming out in the public to just use it as a story to inspire someone. So wherever you are, before you judge, always choose to be in the position of the person first, because in exactly what Pamela said, for me, it's so easy to judge. What do you mean by you don't have choice? But we have never walked where she was. If you've never been homeless and penniless and jobless and in depression, experience those four circumstances at the same time first, and then the identification would be deeper. So to each and every one of you viewers out there, if you want to buy her book, it's available at PamelaJenley.com. I will be sharing this link in the comments now. PamelaJenley.com/love-hills to read more about how this lady chose to be brave in our conservative Asian culture. And Pamela, I'm so happy that you now have put the past in the past and use it as a story to inspire. But more than that, that you have such a beautiful life. You've made such a beautiful life out of your past, your brokenness. So thank you for being such an inspiration. And for all of you out there, if you have a story to share, I would love to hear your story so that we can be a platform that will inspire the others out there. So good night and thank you so much, Pamela.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.